Hello, welcome to another episode of the Inforunners. Today we're going to be talking about greed in CIG, and yeah, greed. I know some people have been talking a lot recently about CIG is just getting greedy recently, and we're not actually going to be pointing the finger and saying, "Oh, look how greedy CIG is." We're going to be breaking down the idea what greed is and how people come to form these perceptions with regards to CIG.
Yeah, so I'm Execute, and below
We got Hayes here. I guess we should start it off with the definition of what greed actually is.
yeah,
And
so
since we're particularly lazy, we'll go with the Google definition because we're like one step too lazy to go to the Wikipedia article.
so Google defines greed as an intense selfishness and desire for something, especially to do with wealth, power, or food. An example of that is mercenaries who allow greed to overtake their principles. I think that's the principles thing is definitely something I kind of associate with being an earlier backer, and like have their principles changed for CIG,
Yeah,
especially.
promises were made, you know.
Mm.
Are they keeping them?
I think that's kind of a part of it too. From an older backer's perspective, are they changing what they initially promised? And change is part of a development, but I think some people do feel entitled, and they feel like some kind of special connection with CIG, that they started this journey with them, and they're somehow kind of being forgotten and a little bit unappreciated might be the word I might use there.
Well, you get older backers' views. Their perception of the whole thing is, they have older funds from ships they've backed from Yonks recently, and now their previous backed ships and their funds aren't worth the money that they paid for them. It sort of gives the impression, CIG, to them that their contributions are no longer appreciated, that their only new backers' funds or new purchases are truly warranted, and while their credits are literally penalized
Yeah.
in return, it's a double whammy when you think of it that way.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation, and you can see why some people feel that way. Well, I guess the other part of it though would be from CIG's perspective. They kind of want to incentivize some new funds from both new backers and older backers. Instead of them kind of like melting their fleets and recycling what they have, but by the same token, kind of going a little bit back to the old backers, I think you want that freedom as well, to be able to choose what you want your fleet to be, especially before the game's actually released, and from the fact that you're
You can
paying
definitely
cash.
say that CIG wants to offer a better option for the war bond in order to incentivize the influx of new money,
Yeah.
even if it is an older backer, even if they have funds they can recycle. They want to try and incentivize them to not recycle their fleets, to put some new and fresh cash in, you could say.
Yeah.
That's the way they're seeing this. This is their approach and their thinking.
And I think the thing that they're missing is kind of like how they're being perceived when they do that, and how
Optics
they
is everything.
how they appear to old backers as well as new is important, because you only get one chance to make a first impression. That's Chris Roberts himself talks about when he presents the game to people, like when he shows a presentation, he talks about that. But I think he kind of forgets that you have to keep up appearances when it comes to how you look after people that have helped you fund your game, because they're not going to put more money in if they feel hurt, or I guess the strong word would be betrayed.
Optics is traditionally something CIG has like a tin air for. Um, it's like they don't understand how their own community perceives the actions that they do. So their intentions and the way the community sort of perceives what they're actually doing aren't necessarily ever in a line. In fact, most of the time they split off in a bit of a different fork on the road, a different direction. And this is something they keep self-inflicting on themselves. They never seem to learn from these sort of mistakes, because they keep repeating this year in and year out. The next couple of months, they make a huge flop. And yet most people can see it a mile away.
I'm going to be honest though, like my perception, and I know this is not a little bit off your script, so to speak. But my perception has really, a lot of the mistakes come from the marketing department. That's where I have most of my problem. Not the development arm, the marketing arm. And I kind of a little bit like the hand doesn't know what the head's thinking type of analogy.
They don't communicate to each other at all.
Yeah, and traditionally we communicate with the developers. We don't communicate with the marketing department. Now I know a lot of people see Sandy as the marketing, but there is more than just Sandy. There's quite a few.
She has many different hats. She's not entirely the marketing.
I wouldn't say she's the main marketer anymore either. I think that's kind of been passed to someone else in the last 3 or 4 years. Anyway, so yeah, getting back to this perception of, I guess, what we call fairness. People feel...
No, perception's everything, isn't it?
So, basically, the reality of what we're seeing is something that we don't feel is fair, and they're not communicating with us properly. And
well, it's sort of like the idea that the reality on the ground doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if CIG is in dire financial stress. It doesn't matter if they're doing exceptionally well. If you don't sell the optics in such a way, people will get a completely different view. I mean, and when we're talking about perception of fairness, it's all about, you can make a sale that is incredibly unfair, and but if you sell it right, people will take it and say, okay, I understand this, or I don't agree with this, but I can see where they're going with this. At the same time, they can take something that is incredibly fair, but they sell it wrongly, and the optics look incredibly bad, and you can literally have this huge community backlash where they think they're getting cheated.
Yeah, they probably need to tell us why they're doing things. There's not a lot of discussions there.
It's all in the communication. It's all in how they play this out, how they explain things, and they're not very good at explaining things. They don't have these conversations with the backers or community or who they're trying to sell to.
And I think that does hurt the backers a little bit, especially older backers that were there when this game was a lot smaller, and they did feel very kind of a bit more special and a bit more like, I'm on the development team. Where now these days it's kind of turned into a bit of a behemoth, and there's a lot of people I know that don't even go on Spectrum anymore because they just don't get that feeling they used to have as part of the team. But that is the nature of development too, as things get bigger and move on.
Yeah, and so people's perceptions is all based around these optics, right? So like, and in CIG, let's go from their view, what they think the optics is looking like. I mean, to them in this sale, let's say they're adding those extra free ground vehicles. They've got that Cyclone, they've got that Nova tank. They're trying to incentivize people to buy those war bonds to get new money into the system. But I have to wonder if marketing took into account that adding an extra vehicle, they were doubling the price gap between war bonds versus credits. So not only did they have like, a $60, a $75, $100 gap between credits and war bonds, they then added in a $55 Cyclone and a $105 Nova tank that made it like a $130 gap between the M2 variants, between credits and war bond, and then a $205 gap between credits and the war bond A2.
It really does make you wonder, like, I can see their positive thought process, but they just don't have that pulse on the community of what the backers are actually like. They're not like the developers that they kind of. It's almost like they're not gamers, is in a way. I don't know how to explain that, but
I think the purpose, people who are in marketing have no idea of accounting because they didn't put 1 and 2 together. I mean, a backer looks at that and they make an immediate comparison between the two, and I bet they had no idea how bad the optics were going to be for when people perceived the fairness of the credit versus the war bond for the M2 and A2 counterparts. So I think they were completely blind to this.
It almost makes me wonder if
marketing.
It almost makes me wonder if they've actually ran this by like the developers other than just Chris Roberts. Like this is the type of thing I would float by the development team and let them sit on it for a week before announcing it, type of thing, so they could actually say, this is not a great idea, or yeah, that'll work, just to get some feedback. It's again, they don't even seem like they're internally communicating to me. But anyway. But
I think even in the first few days of the sale, when the concierge came through, I think they were completely blind to the counter backlash that the optics of this created. They had no idea where it was coming from. Like, I honestly feel that whoever was in charge of marketing was completely blind to the situation that they themselves had created.
This is not the first time this has happened, though. This is probably the worst it's ever been, but not the first time this has happened.
Not the first time. No.
And we keep saying they keep making mistakes, and I would like actually to target it, as we have earlier, mostly at the marketing department, but this is fixable. This is easily fixable. It's just a discussion that needs to be had, and instead of silent, that's all we ever get from them is silence.
CIG 101 with community backlash, radio silence.
Yeah.
Blackout. It's going to go away, right? The screaming mob at the door is going to go away eventually, right?
Yeah, it's almost like they treat us like children and just ignore us and hope we'll go away. And
yeah,
that's not the right way to approach it. Anyway, let's continue.
Let's actually break down how this backlash is, because this is what the really episode is. This is what we're going to be talking about. If you look at ask ourselves here, what are the main precepts of this backlash? Like, what does it center around? And when you look at it, you think about it, it's the perception of loss of value of your credits versus war bond based sales. Like being able to use your old credits to buy the new ships if you decide to move stuff around. Most people, that's where they have their beef in this.
I'm no longer a valued customer. You've just made all my stuff not as valuable as it used to be.
Yeah, depreciation by 25%.
Yeah,
you know, like
it's quite large. Yeah, so I guess the first thing that stood out to me, and I can also tell you this happened to Algrid as well, because I've had discussions with him. The first thing I looked at when I was on the sale page was I was like, oh yeah, okay, so there's $100 price difference between the C2 and the M2. Holy crap! It's double the price of the C2 for the A2. What the actual hell? That just jumped out and slapped me in the face. Like, I'm like, how can any variant be double the price? I can literally get 2 C2s, and you try and tell me how one ship can be better than 2.
Yep. 4 Nova tanks, first one.
Just
it's unprecedented. We're talking
Yeah.
about a 100-meter military ship, right? They made it more expensive than the Hammerhead. In fact, it's only $50 off of the Polaris level.
I'll do it in
credit level.
real simple math. 2 Nova tanks or 4 Nova tanks. Which would you prefer to carry? You know, like it's too like
Yeah,
you look at it on a dollar bang for your buck basis. The 2 C2s are a way better deal than 1 A2. No matter what you look, just doesn't make sense.
No combination of the military tax, because military tax, you've made this more expensive than the Hammerhead, and at the end of the day, you got the new ship tax. Holy God, they stuck it through the roof here. It's like stuff as much as we can in through the roof here, and they'll buy it still. It's a great shit, right? And the optics on this is horrible.
Yeah,
and
the other little part I'd probably add too is, like, this is a niche role ship, and like they've done it with previous ships where there's certain ships that they wanted to make artificial rarity, and this may have been one that fell into that. I don't know if it's the case.
That doesn't even come close to
the other
explaining
stuff.
this price.
Yeah, I know. Well, you try to give them, like, I'm trying to give them stuff to play with here, like the benefit of the doubt, but I struggle to find anything, and that's the only little thing I can find, and it doesn't compare, as you said. It just does not compare.
And then we've got the double whammy of the decreased credit value. Like, there's a $100 gap between the credit and the war bond, and then when they add the Nova tank and the Cyclone, you've literally it's a double whammy, because you're pushing in one direction and the other. It's a double jump between credit and war bond. For a credit version, let's say like a 700 A2, and you don't even get the Nova tank, and it's like. It's adding insult to injury. It's like, here's a big jar of salt, you credit backers, and let's penalize you. You not only are you paying $100 more, you're getting $100 less.
Yeah, as an older backer, one of the things I kind of asked myself, like, and I know I'm not the only one that thinks this, is like, is it time to stop buying ships? Like, is this?
I think a lot of people are asking that question.
Like,
yeah.
And I won't name names, but we know people that buy every ship. And
Yeah,
I know this is the first ship that he has not brought.
Yeah, I'm going to name drop someone. Algrid is like, he's just in a bit of a culture shock here.
Yeah.
He doesn't he's thinking about not buying an A2.
Yeah, and I didn't want to throw him under the bus, but he owns every ship in the game. Every one.
I've put the money aside. I'm waiting on the Q&A and hope things get better. At the end of the day, I'm still conflicted about whether I'm waiting to the last moment to put down the cash. And that's not normal.
Yeah, I like, essentially you're paying like $300 for a Moab module. Does that mean you can take the module out and it literally is just the M2? Is that what this? I know it's got extra guns. Don't you know? But essentially from a cargo ship, because that's kind of what this ship is.
Go to the military version.
I can't. Yeah. I cannot in any universe do the metrics where a module equals an entire ship.
You got the last bit as well, though. The loss of LTI.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think big backers, if you're going to spend $600 or $700 for a credit version, literally, and you're not going to get LTI on your ships, I'm sorry, that's a slap in the face.
Yeah.
That's sort of like, I'm not going to accept that. That's like, I got to CCU something I already own or nothing, because no one who spends $700 on a ship is going to accept 6 months insurance when they can. You know?
Yeah, on CIG's favour though, like I don't know a savvy early backer that wouldn't have an LTI token that they couldn't use anyway. So that I will take that one with a grain of salt. But yeah,
it's still a slap in the face.
It's still a slap in the face, and
it adds to the whole situation. It doesn't do them any favours.
It was another thing they didn't discuss either. Like they slapped it on the 100i, and now it seems to be a trend that's going to continue.
They didn't explain that.
They say LTI is not worth anything. Then why are they using it as an incentive?
Yeah, no, it's disingenuous. They always said LTI comes with new concepts, with new ships, and they're sort of breaking that promise again. One of those broken promises. Many people would argue. I'm not going to say it, but okay, let's shift gears and let's say what are like the older backers thinking when they see this sale? You know. Like when I see it, the first thing they look at is the price. When they look at the new ships, they go, "Oh, what's the new ships?" They look at the price and they compare the M2 to the A2 and the C2, and they see the price differences. But more than anything, they look at the credit version, and then they look at the war bond version, and then they compare. And wait a sec, it's not only $100 up for from credit to war bond, it's also you don't get an extra ship. It's like it's a double negative. Like you go on to
the tank, but yeah, I know what you mean when you say ship.
Most people go into a grocery store, and most people who are anything with money, they look at the price on the thing, and they see the bigger thing of peanut butter, and they see the small one, and then they look at how much money per gram they're paying to see, because sometimes the small peanut butter is cheaper to buy than the larger bottle, and this is an instant comparison they make on an everyday basis every time they go shopping. And
the other one I find funny, while you mention it, is when they do the special on the small one, yet the bigger one's still cheaper per gram. Sorry, I just had to say that because I do that all the time. I'm like, I'll just buy the bigger one.
I know.
And but that is actually a really good reference though, because that is really relevant to what we're talking about here, where they're bundling something that they see as an incentive, but they've not calculated that into the cost. And
or the optics.
Yeah, it's how it's perceived.
The message it sells. Yeah, it's the way people perceive this. It allows them to perceive that their credits are worth 25% less than a war bond, which is like, that's absolutely disgusting. And they can feel themselves, I'm being penalized now. I've done something wrong. Obviously, I'm not a value anymore. And then you slap, I can't get LTI either. It's like, at the end of the day, it's insulting almost for some people.
The other thing,
in complete disbelief.
The other little part I kind of look at is you've got this ship and where it kind of sits in relation to other ships that are priced around it. And I think this is going to be more of an issue going forward, not just for this ship, but other ships, because we have a lot of ships clustered in, that may need to be more expensive and others that need to be cheaper, etc. But this one, like you look at the ships in its price range, let's $700 mark, right? You've got your Polaris, you've got your Hammerhead, and I think both of those very quickly sit above this ship, yet it's priced above a Hammerhead. and it's priced Warborn wise. It's similar to the Polaris, and I would never. Like, if I had to pick between these two ships, I think the Polaris is the no-brainer. Am I wrong in that? Or?
Yeah, I think even the Hammerhead is the no-brainer. The thing is, this is an incredibly niche transport-bombing ship, multi-purpose, as opposed to specialist, like spaceships that are like, defense, flak, anti-fighter, or like torpedo boat. They should be worth more than what this ship is by a metric.
sorry. Sorry, no, I was just going to say, in a weird way, it kind of increases the value of the Hammerhead. In a weird way.
It's going up in price soon.
Oh, yeah. It's like, when that releases in September, you have a guess. Like, we'll just have a total guess here.
$150 at least minimal.
I reckon you're right there.
It has to be.
I'm expecting about $800 mark.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. Sorry, back to what we're talking about. So, also the other part of it, I guess, is the removal of LTI, where it probably doesn't kind of affect smaller ships, but as an earlier backer, and as a backer in general, if you put money into the game, nobody is going to want to risk losing that money. And then you put on top of it, you're spending potentially $700 on a virtual spaceship that could go like that. That is the ultimate gamble, is it not?
The removal of it absolutely is. But I mean, like, the thing about them removing LTI, last sale in the 100i, they removed LTI from these sales. Like, and 100i came in a game package, and it's an LTI token. They didn't sell why they removed it. They just said they didn't even say we were removing it from new concept shows, and if they did, they made it very scarce information. And the thing is, everyone looked at that and immediately thought, through nothing more than common sense, they're removing LTI tokens for the grey marketers who would probably abuse that, and people who would abuse LTI game packages. So if you want an LTI token, if you want an LTI game package, you need to put in new funds. And that made sense. That seems like a no-brainer. But they didn't sell the message of what they had intended going forward, and they banked people accepting that new concept sales with credits would no longer have LTI. And they banked it without realizing that they never properly sold that change. And so when it came up into the new Hercules sale, and they didn't put LTI on the credit versions of like $700 ships, people are going, what the hell? This is new. You never told us this. You're like, oh my God. And when you put that together with all the other problems this sale has, it's just another straw on that camel's back, who's literally about to keel over.
Comes back to what we said earlier about complete lack of communication, and
and that's marketing's fault 101. It's like they're so blind to it.
Starting to feel like we've been taken for granted. Oh, we're this golden goose that just keeps laying eggs, like we've got no personality, we're not human, we're just a machine that keeps giving cash. And
we're the sheep and we're getting fleeced. It's like, it's theirs for the taking.
And I think that, combined with the other few things that have happened in this sale, it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so, like, I guess we're talking about, the sale now. And so, like, I'd say that this entire direction they've been going is very sort of slippery slope. And that the scale has suddenly gone from mild to extremely steep and dangerous. And, the community's perception has accelerated so much because of that huge, steep amount of changes all at one time. And this is... Do you think they made too many changes too quickly, and that's why the sentiment is so hard? Do you think if they slowed down the releases of small incremental changes, people would accept this better?
Yes, I think they would. I also think that they need to do it in more small little steps, and I also think, like, fundamentally, I really bring it back to the communication thing. People are far more accepting of something. Like, if I'm going to give you a needle into the arm and I just jab it in your arm, you're going to be pissed off. But if I tell you, it's to stop you from getting the flu or whatever, you're going to be a lot more accepting of it.
It's like your doctor. He's going, I've got this flu vaccine. You should really take it. Look, it's free, and we'll stick it into you, and you might not get the flu during the year. As opposed to him going, think fast.
Yeah.
What'd you do that for?
It really is a jab in the arm, and
Yeah.
I think they've got like you said just previously. It's kind of been compounded by they haven't explained why they've done these little small things. And at 100i, a lot of people, probably older backers, didn't pick up that shit because it's just not something that is warranted to them. And so therefore, when it jumped onto a ship they actually, cared about, like, it really mattered. I think we need to make a noise about this and actually say we want to talk to the marketing team. We actually want them to talk with us and ask us. And I know they've been trying to do it with
I think we're talking to them, we're screaming very loudly.
Yeah.
I think the conversation's not there, though.
Is it falling on deaf ears? And it feels like it's been falling on deaf ears for the last few years now. So, yeah.
The typical tactic is radio silence. They go behind a big rock and hide under it. I mean, what was the last big sale? Land claims. What was that? We had a land claim sale, and then it wasn't mentioned in ATV and the rest of it. Just almost radio silence for the duration of selling of land claims. It was like they realized how much flack there was, and they found a rock to hide under somewhere and hope it would just go away. And, you know, I think the similar here, because we're not seeing any sort of conversation with the community. They think that if they just don't talk about it, everything's going to be okay. And that's not true, because at the end of the day, being able to communicate with your community, it allows you to take control of the optics, allows you to steer the direction people's perceptions take. Even if it is a bad decision, even if it looks absolutely horrible, if they come down and they talk to people and they explain their thinking and their reasoning, they will get at least half of those people back on side with them. They will curry good favor.
And their thinking by being silent is it'll pass. Yeah, and it will. It'll pass. But that's the thing about resentment.
It's a lost opportunity.
Resentment
is what it is.
Just bear with me. Resentment builds, right? So if you just keep going silent and silent and silent, and eventually, like we say, the straw will break the camel's back and people will stop buying stuff. I haven't looked at the figures for the sales of this ship, but from what I've heard from others, it's down on usual sales. It was down on land claims. They must know they're making mistakes here. It's time to kind of have that discussion. It's been coming for such a long time, and I don't understand.
Like they say community managers, and then they say someone like Disco Lando. He is not a community manager. He is a community PR mouthpiece. He does not actually hold discussions with the community.
No.
And a true community manager would be someone closer to marketing.
His title,
that person,
his title is actually
misleading.
His title, no, it's not. His community is community production manager. He produces content. He's not a community manager. He's a production manager. And the community part you could pretty much lose off his title. They actually need someone from the marketing team, or everyone from the marketing team, to actually start talking to the community about the sales they want. And here's the other part. You don't want to just talk to the whales. You want to talk to everybody. You want to know what everyone wants from their ships. And if they want to... Go ahead.
They literally need a marketing team person to step up and actually have those conversations with people. Someone who's actually, okay, we're trying to sell you this, but this is the reasoning, and this is the conversation we have, and it has to be a back and forth. And at the end of the day, that is closer to a community manager than Disco Lander will ever get.
The last real community manager I think we actually had, I can't remember his name.
Ben?
No, before, but Ben was there, yeah, 100%. But the one I'm thinking is the guy that got fired and they gave Disco his job, and I'm trying to remember his name, and I can't remember his name, and I feel so bad. He had the little pug dog, but yeah, he got fired, and there was another producer that was there that left over the whole problem. So the point is, this discussion, the longer it is not had, the harder it's going to be, right? The sooner you have it,
they will repeat their mistakes over and over as years have gone by. They will never learn from these mistakes if they do not attempt to approach and communicate and try to have this conversation, you could say.
Yeah. Any market So, like, you know, when they go up and up, there's eventually a bubble burst and it collapses. And I think this has the potential to have that bubble burst where they're going to have a huge drop in funding because people are just going to go, I ain't putting up with this shit. Well, other than repeating what I've just said, that this discussion just has to be had. And the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be.
So, changing gears here, do you think things are going to change from here? Do you think they're going to get worse or better? What do you think is going to happen?
Sadly, I think going on the evidence of prior experience, they're not going to change.
Will we double down, or will we actually try to change?
I don't think
historically CIG. There's only one answer there, isn't there?
The only person that I think that would have the power to kind of stop this and see it coming is Ben. And Ben is kind of a bit out of the office at the moment. And,
he's not in the controlling the situation.
And probably the person at control at the moment is Disco Lando. And unfortunately, I just don't think he's got the head for this. He's a great production manager. I totally give him that. But he's not exactly the best at community engagement. I'm going to be honest with you on that.
No, he's hopeless at community engagement, and he's hopeless at having a conversation with the community. He's good at dictating it. And thinking he's, perhaps doing something in that direction, but like he's completely out of his league for this sort of this position. You should say the idea of a marketing based community marketing person.
He, even given by the recent Reverse the Verse, where the only question people wanted answered was about, I can't even remember what the exact question was, but it was the top voted question, and straight off the top of the show, he literally goes, "We will not be answering that today." That is not how you answer that question. You either say no.
He goes ahead and answers the question before the dev can get actually a thing in, and then expects the devs to alliterate about it. And I'm just like, no, we wanted to hear what he said. We didn't even want to hear you talk. It's like, hello, this is this person.
Yeah,
it's like.
Sorry, he handles them. He babies them. He doesn't let them express themselves, and that's happened on many shows. But I digress here.
So I guess it's all doom and gloom. Will CIG change? Probably not. Maybe a couple more Hercules sales and similar optics will eventually get strong enough to break the camel's back, because I think CIG have a very strong camel. Maybe.
So I guess in kind of summary, there was multiple elements here that have kind of come together to make this perfect storm, so to speak, I guess you could call it. Removal of LTI on big ships, the bundling of additional what's the word? Vehicles to incentivize people to buy War Bond and fresh cash in. I can see where they're coming from, but the perception to older backers is this is not good, and this is also going to be an ongoing thing.
There's also that $200 because you got the credit and War Bond is already segregated by $100, and then they introduce a double segregation with those extra ships that they don't give the credit version. So it's like that is a double whammy.
Yep. And then specifically the A2 being priced at the same level of things like the Polaris and over the Hammerhead, yet it is not
price creep.
Yeah, it's not at the same functionality of those ships, not by a long shot. So these all added together. Also,
it makes like a perfect trifecta, of War Bonds versus credit and the negative perceptions that we have. I mean, it's like they did three things and it's a felony, and it just sort of amplifies this optics, this message, these perceptions of greedy CIG. You might as well, put Chris Roberts in a Grinch suit at this point, right?
Yeah. Very good look, actually. I'd pay to see that. Look, I think I'm going to wrap up by saying I would have priced this at the three ships at 300, 350, and 400. I think that would have been more than reasonable. It would have been in line with previous sales.
Yep.
And I think
even if they put the extra ship, even if they put the Tumbril Cyclone and the Nova tank in with the War Bonds, it's still people wouldn't have been as outraged as they are now.
Yep. One or the other. No, it doesn't. Both was probably too much.
They just did too much too quickly, and in combination, if they managed to be a bit more moderate, try to go more, mainstream down the middle, as opposed to going to such an extreme length in this sale. Perhaps it could have been better. Hopefully in future it will be better.
Okay. I think we'll leave it there. So if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe. We've also just hit 1,000 subscribers, which is really awesome milestone for us. We've also got a Discord that you can leave any questions that you'd feel free for us to answer. You can target it at any Inforunner you wish. I've been Execute, and down below we have...
This is Hayes, and as always, we'll be signing off, and we'll catch you again next time.
Thank you.